On May 14th, 1986, in the late morning heat of Singapore, two primary six boys set out for an ordinary school day and simply never arrived. No screaming, no witnesses who could say for sure what even happened. Just a silence that has lasted almost 40 years now. Their names were Kei Chin An and To Hung Huat. Both were 12. Both were students at Owen Primary School, which stood near the junction of Owen Road and Oxford Road in central Singapore. Chin An was the youngest of three children and the only son in his family. His parents, coffee powder seller Kei Cheng Pan and housewife Tae Mi Na, doted on him. Teachers described him as playful but well behaved. Hang Huat was born in Malaysia and living in Singapore with his mother, Tan Guat Ban. He was a top student in mathematics, ranking first in his class, and was known as quiet, timid, and very attached to his mother. Singapore in the mid 1980s was already considered a safe city. Parents let children walk to school, kids played freely in the void decks beneath their apartment blocks, and abductions were rare. That sense of safety is part of what makes this case so chilling. On the day they vanished, both boys were scheduled for the afternoon session of school, with class beginning at 12:55 p.m. Late that morning, Chin An arrived at Owen Primary by school bus, and at some point before the class, he spoke to a classmate, Wang Py, and asked Py to watch his school bag while he went out to nearby shops just outside the school grounds. Py agreed. He later left his own bag and Chin An's bag on a bench at the school tuck stop, assuming his friend would be back at any minute to pick it up. That never happened, and the bag was never claimed. Meanwhile, about 500 meters away from the school, Hang Huat was at home with his mother. Normally, she walked him to school because he disliked going anywhere alone. However, that day he insisted on walking by himself, saying he would meet a friend along the way. His mother thought it was strange, but she assumed he meant Chin An, and she let him go. That would be the last time that she ever saw her son alive. Sometime between that short walk from home to school and the start of class, both boys disappeared. When the bell rang for lessons at 12:55 p.m., Py noticed that Chin An had still not returned. He then told the teacher. The teacher checked the class list and realized that both Chin An and Hang Huat were missing. At first, teachers thought it might be the boys playing truant. Even though they were good students, it had no history of skipping school ever. But as the afternoon passed with no sign of them, concern turned into alarm. By that evening, the school had contacted both families. Why didn't they contact them right away? Hang Huat's mother and Chin An's parents rushed to the school, where they began searching the grounds and nearby housing estates. When they could not find their sons, they then went to the police. Police mounted a large search in the neighborhoods around Owen Road, and officers went block to block, checking stairwells, playgrounds, drains, and surrounding streets. They interviewed classmates, teachers, shopkeepers, and residents. Still, nothing. No one could say they had seen two boys in uniforms being dragged away. No one remembered hearing the screams. The boys appeared to have simply just walked off the face of the earth. In the months that followed, the search escalated into Singapore's most intense missing children investigation. Thousands of missing posters with the boys' faces were printed and distributed across the island. Their parents went door to door and plastered void decks and shop fronts with flyers. At first, each family offered a $1,000 reward for information. When no leads emerged, they raised it to $5,000, then to $20,000. Later that year, during McDonald's Founders Day celebrations, the managing director of McDonald's Singapore, Robert Kwan, stunned the public by announcing a reward of $100,000 for any information that could lead to the boys' recovery. Missing posters went up in McDonald's outlets all over Singapore, and the case picked up the nickname that has followed it ever since, the McDonald's Boys. A special police hotline was set up. Sightings came in from all over the island. Some callers claimed to have seen two boys matching the description at a bus terminal, accompanied by two middle-aged Chinese men. Others reported them in different neighborhoods. Every lead was checked. None of them led to the boys, however. 3 months after the disappearance, in August 1986, there was a particularly promising tip. Someone reported seeing two boys like Chin An and Hong Huat in Pulau Ubin, a small island north of mainland Singapore. The Criminal Investigation Department responded with about 100 officers. They divided the island and surrounding islets into sectors, combing through the area in small teams. They found nothing. Then came the phone calls. On September 3rd, 1986, about 4 months after the boys vanished, Chin An's father, Mr. K. Chengpan, received a disturbing telephone call at home. To this day, the exact words are unknown. Mr. K later described it only as a nasty phone call. The stress was so intense that the very next day, while on his way to a Chinese temple with his wife, he would suffer a stroke. Hokkien told her bluntly that she should not hope for her son's return. It was vulgar, cruel, and offered no useful information. Gotta hate people sometimes. It did, however, deepen the family's sense that someone out there knew more than what they were saying. Over the following months, the two families grew close, bound by shared grief. Together, they visited more than 40 Chinese temples, asking monks and mediums for any hint of what happened to their sons. They clung to small rituals of hope while the official investigation stalled. Police did not stop working this case. By 1988, over 100 people had been interviewed. The search was extended beyond Singapore's borders to Malaysia, Indonesia, and even Thailand. The boys' details were sent to Interpol, yet no solid leads emerged. In November 1986, Singapore's long-running crime prevention program, Crime Watch, aired a reconstruction of the boys' last known movements, appealing for information. Years later, in 2004, another documentary series titled Missing revisited the case. In that episode, Chin An's father appeared on camera, showing that he still kept photographs of both boys in his wallet 18 years after they disappeared. The production team tried to contact Hong Wat's mother but could not trace where she was. In 1993, 7 years after the boys vanished, the law stepped in where evidence could not. Under Singapore law, a person missing for at least 7 years may be declared legally dead. On May 14, 1993, both boys were officially declared dead, even though no bodies had ever been found. For their families, it was bureaucratic formality that did nothing to ease the pain or answer their questions. Over the years, the family's lives slowly changed. Chin An's family moved out of their Toa Payoh flat a few years after he disappeared, but his mother would still return to the old building, waiting and watching in case he somehow came home. Neighbors recall that for decades she rarely smiled and kept to herself, still deeply affected by the loss of her son. Mr. K's health declined. He suffered from dementia in later life and eventually passed away, never knowing what happened to his child. Hong Huat's mother eventually moved back to Malaysia. In 1990, she visited the Malaysian Chinese Association Public Services and Complaints Department in Kuala Lumpur, asking veteran caseworker Michael Chong for help. He recalled years later that she seemed resigned but still desperate for answers. After a few calls and efforts to publicize the case, she stopped contacting his office. Her later life and current whereabouts are not publicly known. Decades passed and the McDonald's boys case became part of Singapore's collective memory. Their faces appeared in lists of unsolved cases, in articles about missing persons, and in features reflecting on how rare it is for people to vanish without an explanation in such a small, tightly monitored country. Then in 2010, more than 26 years after the disappearance, a new tip surfaced. An anonymous informant claimed he had once seen two boys and a girl in a garden opposite a KK Women and Children's Hospital. According to his story, a man suddenly grabbed one boy while the other followed behind. The dates and ages fit what the boys would have been in 1986, but the claim was decades old, with no physical evidence or corroborating witnesses. After checking what they could, authorities deemed the tip unreliable. In the last few years, renewed public interest has brought the case back into the spotlight. Media outlets and true crime shows in Singapore have revisited the story, including an online video series by local outlets and articles by the Home Brown Asia and must share news in 2022 and 2025. These pieces re examine possible theories and emphasize that the case is still officially unsolved. Among the theories, one of the most discussed involves Hong Huat's estranged father. Investigations revealed that Hong Huat's parents had once co owned a bus company but divorced after financial difficulties. His father allegedly continued to turn up at his previous school to see him. Concerned that he might take the boy, Madame Tan transferred Hong Huat between several schools and moved houses. Some believe that on May 14, 1986, his father may have finally taken him to Malaysia with Chen An caught up simply because he was with his friend at the wrong moment. Police arrested the father during the early investigation, but he was released due to insufficient evidence. No charges were ever brought against him. Other theories that are darker. One suggests the boys were abducted by a human trafficking ring and taken to Thailand, where they were forced into begging after having their limbs mutilated. Another speculates about ritual killing. Investigators and later commentators have pushed back on these ideas. There were no similar disappearances that fit a pattern of ritual murders, and no evidence has surfaced to support the trafficking claims. A more recent angle looks at Owen Primary School itself. In 1975, 11 years before the McDonald's boys vanished, another student from the same school, a boy named Wang Wing Boon, also disappeared and was never found. During a crime awareness tour years later, some members of the public suggested that a teacher might have been involved in both cases and later transferred to a nearby school. At this stage, that idea remains pure speculation. Both of the Ministry of Education and Singapore police have said there is no confirmed evidence to support it. What has not changed is the core fact. Two boys left for school on a bright Wednesday in 1986 and vanished between a classroom, a few shop fronts, and 500-meter walk. All the theories in the world have not produced a body, a confession, or a confirmed sighting. In 2020, when Singapore finally charged a suspect in another long-running missing persons case, that of 19-year-old Felicia Chow, journalists went back to speak with Tay Mina, Chen An's mother. She was 80 years old. She told them her memory was hazy and that she preferred not to talk about her son. I can imagine why. Neighbors said she still sometimes went back to their old Toa Payoh block and sat quietly watching as if waiting for a boy who never came home. As of 2025, the case of Kay Chin Na and To Hong Huat remains open. Officially, they are presumed dead. Unofficially, in the hearts of those who remember them, there is still small, stubborn hope that somewhere in the world and might one day be identified. Until that day comes, if it ever does, their story stands as one of the most baffling and heartbreaking child disappearances Singapore has ever seen.